So I have some more thoughts about this bribe, this $400+ million Boeing 747 luxury jumbo jet that the Royal Family of Qatar, just out of the goodness of their heart and the spirit of friendship, just decided to gift to the convicted felon President Donald Trump. Now, a lot obviously has been said about this. I've talked about it, but I had a couple additional thoughts. First of all, he says that this plane will be managed by the Department of Defense. It will be the property of the federal government under the Department of Defense. And then shortly before Trump leaves office, it will be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library. And that before that happens, Trump will use it as Air Force One while he is president. Now, this plane will need to be retrofitted at great cost to the American taxpayer. And reporting out today suggests that the cost to retrofit this plane will be upwards of $750 million or more that the American people will now pay for this plane. So hardly the free gift that Trump claims it is, but putting that aside, a couple questions. First, how is it, where does the money come from? How is it that Donald Trump, as president, has the money to just do that? Now, I know it's a quaint notion to cite the Constitution, especially given our current circumstances, but humor me anyway. It's Congress under our Constitution that has the power of the purse. No money can be spent by the president unless it has been appropriated by Congress. Congress appropriated no money to retrofit a plane given to the government. We know this is given personally to Donald Trump, which I'll get to in a minute. But there's no money allocated by Congress to retrofit a plane given to us by the Qataris. There's no money for that. So where is the money going to come from? How? And where's the press asking that question? There's been no appropriation from Congress. So how is he intending to spend money to retrofit this plane? So there's that. But with respect to the retrofit and the renovations of this plane, that's going to take quite a bit of time. And it's going to take some number of years. And it is very likely that Donald Trump will never use this plane as president. Now, let's just assume for argument's sake that he does leave office at the expiration of his 4-year term. And I know that's not an assumption we should make, but just for purposes of this discussion. So he's got, 3.5 years left on his term? We haven't even taken possession of this plane yet. It's going to take a while to retrofit. So it's very likely he will never use this plane as president. So really, it's going to come to the United States, come to the possession of the federal government. We'll spend close to $1 billion refurbishing it. And then we're going to hand it over to the Trump Presidential Library, which, as I understand it, he will then be able to use after he leaves office. So this claim, the claim was always ridiculous on its face anyway, but the claim that this is not a gift to Donald Trump, this is a gift to the American people. What a joke. The American people will never benefit from this at all, even to the limited benefit of flying around the president as Air Force One. That we will never even get that benefit. The only person who will be flying this is more than likely Donald Trump in his personal capacity after he leaves office. So this is just so clearly a personal gift to Donald Trump. I mean, technical ownership, if you're saying that, oh, it's technically owned by the federal government and then the presidential library, that's all just semantic bullshit. This is a gift to Donald Trump for his personal use and benefit. That's it. So obvious. So obviously criminal. It's clearly a bribe, so obviously unconstitutional. But aside from that, I have some questions, too, regarding this. I don't know the laws related to transferring property of the federal government to these presidential libraries. I don't know how that works. I don't know what control presidents have over what property gets transferred to these presidential libraries. But my question is, how the hell does he have the authority to just decide what goes over to his presidential library? Like, he has sole authority to do that? So if we take his ridiculous argument that this is a gift to the United States to be used as Air Force One, how can he then just decide to take it with him to his library when he leaves office? Okay, if it's being put in service, if the federal government owns it and it's being put in service as Air Force One because our current Air Force One is old and crappy, I guess, how does he get to just decide, you know what, I like this plane, I'm going to take it with me to my presidential library and then just continue to use it? How does he have the authority to do that? And if he has the authority to do that, can't just every president just decide, hey, I'm taking Air Force One with me to my presidential library so I can use it after I leave office? I mean, nobody is even asking these questions, or at least I haven't heard anyone ask these questions. Aren't these obvious questions? How is this not a topic of discussion in the press? I don't know. But beyond that, these materials, property of the federal government that gets transferred to these presidential libraries, that's still federal property, right? And there's lots of government documents and other government property that's transferred. However that transference occurs, however those decisions are made about what gets transferred, that's still federal property at those presidential libraries. So even if Donald Trump, and I would love to know under what authority he gets to make that decision, I'm taking Air Force One with me, or this plane that I'm using as Air Force One with me, it's still property of the federal government just being run through the presidential library, right? So let's assume that all happens. And let's assume, again, just for purposes of this discussion, that Trump leaves office in 3.5 years. And we get a new president. And let's just say, for argument's sake, that it's a Democratic president. We have a Democratic Congress. Can't they just take that plane back? I mean, it's government property. Can't they just, the president and Congress, just override all of that shit from Trump and just order that plane back to the custody of the Department of Defense, or back to the possession of the Department of Defense? Can't they just take it away from him? I don't see why not. Anyway, the idea that we're even having... Ooh, there's a big heron. The idea that we're even having this discussion is, I mean, it doesn't matter. Why even bother describing it anymore? I've run out of adjectives sufficient to convey my level of outrage over all of this. And I think that one of the things that bothers me the most is that few people seem to care all that much. There's certainly not the level of outrage that there should be, not even close. And the press is so pathetic in all of this. You know, I'll leave with this. I think one of the biggest problems we have in terms of why Donald Trump gets away with so much of this stuff and why the public doesn't get as outraged as we think that they should is because this is all normalized, largely by the press and the two-party system. But let me just focus on the press. I think the American people, so many of them are just oblivious. They don't understand how anything works, really. I mean, they don't pay attention to a large degree anyway. The average American has no idea what the hell is going on. Most of them, I guarantee you, don't even know shit about this plane. I mean, really. But to the extent anyone knows about what's going on, so few Americans actually understand anything. Don't understand the law, don't understand the Constitution, don't understand how anything is supposed to work. So when these things that happen outside of the legal framework, things that are illegal and unconstitutional and unprecedented, all these things that we get rightfully outraged over, when your average clueless American looks at this stuff, they don't know what to think about it on their own because they have no idea. They take their cues from others, other trusted sources, or other people and institutions that they think are like the watch guards over all of this stuff. And they, like the press and certain politicians and political parties and things. But certainly the press, if this was something that's so illegal and so criminal and unconstitutional, which it is, the average American would say to themselves, well, then why aren't people calling for him to be impeached? Why aren't there prosecutions? Why isn't the media telling me that this is illegal and that Trump should be impeached for this and that this is bribery? If this is bribery, why isn't the media? Why isn't that headline news on every news broadcast, every newspaper, every news outlet? Why aren't they all telling me that this is illegal bribery? And the fact that that's not happening, and you're the average American who doesn't understand any of this stuff, and well, I guess it can't really be all that bad. No one's calling for him to be prosecuted. No one's even saying that this is really criminal. I turn on the TV and they're just talking about it like it's just some normal political thing. One side says it's bad, the other side says it's not bad, and the media, whatever. I don't know. I just think the way that the media reacts to it, and look, I know Democrats don't control Congress, but why aren't there calls for impeachment, like serious calls for impeachment? Why isn't Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, and Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, why aren't they holding joint press conferences talking about how this is illegal bribery? This is an illegal bribery scheme, and that Donald Trump should be impeached and removed from office for this. There's lots that could be done to make a bigger deal about this. And I'm just saying, if you're the average American and you're not seeing a bigger deal being made about this, if you're not seeing that joint press conference, for example, or similar things, saying that, conveying outrage, saying very clearly that this is bribery, this is illegal, this is unconstitutional, Trump should be impeached and removed from office for this and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for this illegal bribery scheme. If they're not seeing that, then they can just chalk this all up to just more political noise. I don't know. Those are just some of my thoughts about this whole thing. Trying not to get too outraged. I'm outraged about it, but it's hard to keep up this level of outrage every day, and it's not friggin' healthy. So anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? The whole thing is just so damn sickening. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon.